Picture this. 1796 Europe is ablaze. Revolutionary France, a beacon of liberty and terror, is locked in a deadly struggle against the old monarchies of Europe. The fate of nations hangs in the balance. In the north, seasoned French armies clash with Austrian and British forces. But it's in the south, amidst the towering peaks and fertile valleys of Italy, where a young, ambitious general named Napoleon Bonaparte will etch his name in the annals of history. Napoleon, a Corsican outsider, barely 26 years old, is entrusted with command of the army of Italy. It's a ragtag force, ill-equipped, underfed and demoralized. They are outnumbered and outgunned by the combined might of Austria and the Kingdom of Piedmont. Yet Napoleon sees not limitations but opportunities. He sees a chance to prove himself, to seize glory for France and to reshape the destiny of Europe. Napoleon's arrival in Italy electrifies his troops. His energy is infectious, his confidence absolute. He speaks of victory, of glory, of driving the enemy from the field. He promises his soldiers food, riches, and honor. In their young general, they see a leader worth fighting for, a leader who will lead them to victory. The stage is set for one of the most audacious military campaigns in history. A campaign that will redefine warfare, shatter empires, and forge the legend of Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte was not a general who believed in brute force alone. He was a master strategist, a chess player on a grand scale, who saw the battlefield as a canvas upon which to paint his masterpiece of war. Facing a numerically superior enemy, Napoleon knew he couldn't defeat the Austrians and Piedmontese head-on. He had to divide and conquer. His plan was daring in its simplicity. He would drive a wedge between his enemies, separating the Austrian and Piedmontese armies. Then he would isolate and defeat each in turn, using speed and decisiveness to overcome their numerical advantage.
Napoleon's strategy hinged on controlling key geographic points, the mountain passes and river crossings that were the arteries of movement in this mountainous terrain. He would use the Alps not as a barrier but as a weapon, maneuvering his troops through treacherous passes, appearing where the enemy least expected.
The key to his success lay in the speed and mobility of his army. He would march his troops further and faster than any army had marched before, living off the land and striking like lightning. His soldiers, inspired by their young general, were more than willing to follow him into the heart of danger. The French army of Italy, reinvigorated by Napoleon's leadership, surged into action. Their first objective, the mountain passes that separated the Austrian and Piedmontese forces. Napoleon knew that by seizing these vital arteries, he could dictate the pace and direction of the campaign. The fighting was fierce and brutal. French soldiers, many of them veterans of the Revolution, clashed with their Austrian and Piedmontese counterparts amidst the towering peaks and narrow valleys of the Italian Alps. Cannons roared, muskets flashed, and the clash of steel echoed through the mountain passes.
I led from the front, inspiring my men by my personal courage and unwavering determination. I shared their hardships, ate their rations, and slept under the same open sky. I was one of them, and they would follow me anywhere.
The French army, fueled by revolutionary zeal and Napoleon's inspiring leadership, fought with a ferocity that surprised their enemies. They stormed enemy positions, scaled treacherous cliffs and endured punishing marches, all the while pushing their adversaries back, inch by bloody inch. The Battle of Montenotte, fought on April 12, 1796, was a testament to Napoleon's strategic brilliance and his ability to exploit the weaknesses of his enemies. The Austro-Piedmontese forces, commanded by the experienced Austrian general Argenteau, were positioned on the heights of Montenotte, seemingly in an impregnable position.
Napoleon, however, saw an opportunity. He recognized that our lines were too thinly spread, our communication hampered by the difficult terrain.
He devised a plan to attack the weakest point in their line, the junction between the Austrian and Piedmontese forces. Under cover of darkness, French troops, guided by local shepherds, scaled the treacherous slopes surrounding the enemy positions. By daybreak, they were in position, poised to strike.
The attack, when it came, was swift and decisive. French columns smashed into the exposed flank of the Austro-Piedmontese army, throwing their lines into disarray. The element of surprise, coupled with the ferocity of the French assault, proved too much for the defenders.
Panic spread through their ranks as French troops, their bayonets thirsty for victory, stormed forward. The Austro-Piedmontese army, routed and demoralized, fled from the field. The victory at Montenotte sent shockwaves through the enemy camp.
Napoleon, capitalizing on his success, pressed his advantage, relentlessly pursuing the retreating Austro-Piedmontese forces. His next target, the Piedmontese army, now separated from its Austrian allies.
The Battle of Mondovi, fought just 6 days after Montenotte, was a decisive encounter. The Piedmontese army, commanded by General Colli, made a stand near the town of Mondovi, hoping to halt the French advance and buy time for their Austrian allies to regroup.
Napoleon, sensing an opportunity to deliver a knockout blow, launched a two-pronged attack. French infantry, advancing with their customary élan, fixed the enemy in place, while Napoleon unleashed his cavalry, led by the dashing General Murat.
The French cavalry charge, a thunderous wave of steel and horseflesh, crashed into the Piedmontese lines, shattering their formations and sending them reeling in disarray. The Battle of Mondovi was a resounding victory for the French. The Piedmontese army, thoroughly routed, was no longer capable of offering serious resistance. The road to Turin, the capital of Piedmont, lay open before Napoleon and his victorious army. The Kingdom of Piedmont, its army shattered and its capital threatened, had little choice but to sue for peace.
Napoleon, ever the pragmatist, offered generous terms. He knew that a protracted campaign in Italy would drain his resources and give his enemies time to regroup. He needed to secure his gains and turn his attention to the Austrians.
The Armistice of Cherasco, signed on April 28, 1796, effectively knocked Piedmont out of the war. Piedmont ceded territory to France and granted the French army free passage through its territory, effectively opening up the Austrian heartland to Napoleon's advancing forces.
Napoleon, ever the showman, ensured that his victories were celebrated with appropriate fanfare. He entered Turin, the captured capital of Piedmont, in triumph, greeted by cheering crowds. He sent captured enemy banners and standards back to Paris, tangible proof of his victories.
He also knew how to reward his troops. He distributed captured supplies and funds amongst his soldiers, ensuring their continued loyalty and boosting their morale. He praised their courage, shared their hardships, and promised them even greater glories to come. The swift collapse of Piedmont stunned the Austrians. They had underestimated the young Corsican general and the fighting spirit of the French army.
However, the Austrians were not finished. They were, after all, one of the most formidable military powers in Europe, with a long and distinguished martial tradition.
Austrian reinforcements under the command of General Beaulieu rushed to bolster their defences in Lombardy, determined to halt Napoleon's advance and drive the French back across the Alps. They fortified key river crossings, hoping to use the terrain to their advantage and blunt the momentum of the French offensive.
They had also learned from their earlier defeats. They would no longer underestimate Napoleon or allow themselves to be caught off guard by his unorthodox tactics. They would fight with discipline and determination, relying on their superior numbers and firepower to wear down the French.
The stage was set for a clash of titans, a battle that would determine the fate of northern Italy and test the limits of Napoleon's strategic genius. Section 8, Lodi, a bridge too far. The River Adda became the next focal point in the struggle for dominance. The bridge at Lodi, a seemingly insignificant crossing, would become the scene of a battle that would further cement Napoleon's growing reputation as a military genius.
The Austrians, believing the bridge to be strategically insignificant, left only a rear guard to defend it, while the bulk of their forces retreated across the River Adda.
Napoleon, seeing an opportunity to strike a decisive blow, ordered an immediate assault. The bridge, however, was defended by well-positioned Austrian artillery, and any direct assault would result in heavy casualties.
The Austrians were confident that the bridge was impassable.
Undeterred, Napoleon devised a daring plan. Under the cover of intense French artillery fire, a column of grenadiers, the elite of the French army, would charge across the bridge, braving the Austrian cannon fire. The assault was a desperate gamble, a race against time and death. Yet the French grenadiers, inspired by their general's courage and driven by their own unwavering élan, stormed across the bridge, their bayonets fixed, their battle cries echoing across the river. Section 9. The Shadow of Napoleon, Psychological Warfare and its Impacts. The Battle of Lodi, though smaller in scale than some of the other battles of the Italian campaign, had a significance that extended far beyond the battlefield.
The image of French grenadiers charging across the bridge, braving enemy fire and emerging victorious, became a symbol of French military might and the indomitable spirit of Napoleon's army. More importantly, Lodi cemented Napoleon's reputation as a general who took risks, who defied conventional military wisdom, and who always seemed to be one step ahead of his enemies.
This reputation preceded him, sowing doubt and uncertainty in the minds of his adversaries. The Austrian soldiers, once confident in their own superiority, began to question their ability to defeat this seemingly invincible young general. They had faced the French and had been defeated time and time again.
The fear of Napoleon's name, his mere presence on the battlefield, became a weapon as potent as any sword or cannon. This psychological advantage, this aura of invincibility, would play a crucial role in Napoleon's future victories.
Section 10. A Rising Star. Napoleon's growing reputation. News of Napoleon's victories in Italy electrified France. Here, at last, was a general who could deliver victories, who could restore French military prestige, and who could perhaps bring an end to the seemingly endless wars that had plagued the Republic since the Revolution.
Newspapers hailed Napoleon as a hero, a savior, a second coming of Julius Caesar. His victories provided a much-needed boost to the morale of the French people, weary of war and economic hardship.
Napoleon's name was on everyone's lips. He became a symbol of French military glory, of revolutionary zeal, of a nation that had once again found its voice on the world stage. Portraits of the young general, his face a study in determination and ambition, were everywhere.
More importantly, Napoleon's victories in Italy had significant political ramifications. They strengthened the position of the Directory, the five-man executive body that governed France at the time. The Directory, facing internal dissent and external threats, needed a hero, a figure who could unite the nation and secure its borders. Napoleon, with his string of victories, seemed to be the answer to their prayers.
Section 11. Conclusion, a legacy forged in fire. Napoleon's first Italian campaign, a whirlwind of battles, strategic brilliance and stunning victories, marked the beginning of his meteoric rise to power. The lessons he learned in the mountains and plains of Italy, the tactics he refined and the reputation he forged would shape his future campaigns and cement his legacy as one of the greatest military commanders in history.
His ability to inspire his troops, his mastery of speed and maneuver, and his understanding of the psychological dimensions of warfare set him apart from his contemporaries. He was a general who not only won battles, but who understood how to use those victories to achieve his strategic objectives.
The Italian campaign, however, was only the beginning. Napoleon's ambition, like his genius, knew no bounds. The victories in Italy were merely a stepping stone to greater things, a prelude to the epic saga that would be Napoleon's life and legacy. He would go on to conquer vast empires, crown himself emperor and reshape the map of Europe, his name forever etched in the annals of history.